Another late night at your little research lab? Michael's voice dripped with familiar condescension as I packed my laptop. You know, Sarah, there's still an associate position open at my firm. A real job with real money. I forced a smile, used to my husband's attempts to help my career. I like my work at the Institute, Michael. The quantum computing research we're doing is fascinating, I'm sure. He cut in, straightening his Armani tie. But we're having dinner with my parents tonight. Mom's worried about you, you know. She thinks you're settling. Of course she did. Barbara Thompson had made her opinion of my career choice clear from the day Michael and I got engaged. In her world, success meant corporate law firms, country club memberships, and charity galas where people competed to show who cared the most about causes they barely understood. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I'm a quantum physicist. For the past 3 years, I've been leading a research team at the Quantum Computing Institute, working on something that could change everything we knew about computer science. Not that my in-laws cared. The institute wasn't glamorous. Our labs occupied a converted warehouse in an industrial park. Our equipment was mostly secondhand, and my salary was a fraction of what Michael made in a month. But we were doing something revolutionary, if only I could make it work. Jess, try to sound more positive about your career tonight, Michael advised as we drove to his parents' mansion in Beverly Hills. Mom's invited the Worthingtons. Their daughter Rebecca just made junior partner at Goldman Sachs. I stared out the window, thinking about the breakthrough we'd had in the lab that morning. After 3 years of failures, the quantum coherence patterns had finally stabilized for more than a microsecond. We were close to something extraordinary, but trying to explain that to the Thompsons was like trying to teach quantum mechanics to a goldfish. The mansion loomed ahead, all Mediterranean grandeur and old money pretension. Michael's sister Catherine's Tesla was already parked in the circular driveway, along with several other luxury vehicles that probably cost more than my annual research budget. Sarah, darling. Barbara Thompson air-kissed my cheeks, her diamond earrings catching the light. Still working at that little science place. You look tired, dear. Have you considered a spa day? Before I could respond, Catherine swept in wearing what looked like this season's entire Gucci collection. Mom, you have to see Rebecca's engagement ring. James Worthington finally proposed. The next hour was a blur of sophisticated cocktails and not-so-subtle digs at my career choices. I sat quietly, nursing a glass of wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget, while the conversation swirled around law firm mergers, stock portfolios, and the tragic state of the health these days. Sarah's still doing her research thing, Barbara told the Worthingtons over dinner. It's so noble, isn't it? Sacrificing financial success for scientific pursuits. Mom, Michael warmed, but his mother was on a roll. I mean, with her education, Stanford, wasn't it? She could be making real money, but she insists on this little hobby of hers. Something about computers. Quantum computing, I corrected quietly. We're developing a new architecture that could revolutionize. Yes, fascinating, I'm sure, Barbara cut in. But darling, you're not getting any younger. Don't you think it's time to get a real job? Like Michael? I felt my phone vibrate in my clutch but ignored it. The lad could wait. Actually, I started, ready to finally explain what we'd achieved that morning, but Catherine's laugh cut me off. Oh, Mom, leave her alone. Not everyone is meant for success. Sarah's happy with her little experiments. My phone buzzed again. And again. Something was wrong. The lab never called this persistently unless it was an emergency. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to take this. Really, Sarah? Barbara sighed. During dinner? I stepped into the hallway and answered. Dr. Chen. Sarah, Marcus, my lead researcher, was practically shouting. The coherence, it's still holding. 6 hours and counting. We've done it. My hands started shaking. That's impossible. The quantum state shouldn't. I know, but it is. NASA's on the other line. They've been monitoring our results. They want to talk to you immediately. I leaned against the wall, my mind racing. 6 hours of quantum coherence? That wasn't just a breakthrough. It was impossible. It violated everything we thought we knew about quantum mechanics. Sarah, Michael appeared in the hallway. Mom's about to serve dessert. Can't your little lab wait? I held up a hand, listening to Marcus read out the stability measurements. Each number confirmed what shouldn't have been possible. We'd done it. After 3 years of failure, ridicule, and funding struggles, we'd actually done it. Put NASA through to my cell, I told Marcus. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Everything okay? Michael asked as I ended the call. Another failed experiment? I smiled, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Actually, no. For once, everything worked exactly as I theorized. We should go back to the dining room. I believe NASA's about to call, and I hate for your family to miss it. NASA? Michael laughed. Why would NASA care about your research? Right on cue, my phone rang again. The caller ID displayed, NASA GPL Diary Citor. I walked back into the dining room, where Barbara was holding court about the importance of proper career choices. I mean, really, she was saying, there's research, and then there's real contribution to society. Like Michael's work in corporate law. He's helping shape the future off. I set my phone in the center of the table and answer on speaker. Dr. Chen speaking. Dr. Chen, this is Dr. James Martinez, Director of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA. I apologize for calling so late, but we've been monitoring your quantum coherence breakthrough. What you've achieved, it's revolutionary. The room fell silent. Barbara's fork clattered against her plate. Thank you, Dr. Martinez. I assume you've seen the stability readings. Seen them? Dr. Chen, we've spent the last hour verifying them because we couldn't believe what we were seeing. 6 hours of sustained quantum coherence at room temperature. It rewrites everything we know about quantum computing. Catherine's smug smile had frozen on her face. Michael was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Michael, I'll catch a ride to the lab. You should stay, enjoy your mother's cooking. After all, that's what real success looks like, right? I walked out of the Thompson mansion feeling lighter than I had in years. Behind me, I could hear Barbara's voice, higher than usual. A Nobel Prize? My daughter-in-law might win a Nobel Prize. But I wasn't thinking about the Thompsons anymore. My mind was already back in the lab, working through the implications of what we'd achieved. We'd done more than prove a theory. We'd opened a door to an entirely new era of computing. Marcus was waiting outside the lab when I arrived, practically bouncing with excitement. They're all here, he said. NASA, Department of Defense, even some suits from Silicon Valley. Everyone wants to know how we did it. I smiled, thinking of Barbara Thompson's face when she realized her daughter-in-law's little hobby might change the world. We'd like to offer you immediate funding for expanded research, Dr. Martinez continued. Full facilities, staff, equipment, whatever you need. The military's interested as well. The applications for stable quantum computing, the possibilities are endless. I appreciate the offer, I said calmly, watching my mother-in-law's face turn an interesting shade of white. But I'll need to consult with my current team before making any decisions. Of course. But Dr. Chen, what you've done, it's going to change everything. The Nobel Committee will definitely be interested. I ended the call to complete silence. Even the Worthingtons, who'd spent dinner bragging about Rebecca's 6-figure signing bonus, seemed stunned. Nobel? Barbara whispered. As in, Nobel Prize? It's a possibility, I said, taking a sip of my wine. Quantum computing at this scale, it's never been done before. Of course, it's just my little hobby, so I'm sure it's not as impressive as making junior partner. Michael found his voice first. Sarah, why didn't you tell me your research was this important? I tried, many times, but somehow the conversation always turned to real jobs and real success. I stood gathering my things. I need to get to the lab. NASA's sending a team, and there's quite a bit of work to do. But, dessert? Barbara managed weakly. I'm sure it's lovely, but I have a revolution to document. Then let's not keep them waiting. After all, this is a real job with real results. The next few hours would transform not just my career, but the entire field of quantum computing. But that's another story, one that begins with a room full of scientists realizing that everything they thought they knew about quantum mechanics was about to change. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of activity that transformed our modest research facility into the center of the scientific world. NASA's team arrived first, followed by representatives from every major tech company and research institution. Our quiet warehouse lab suddenly buzzed with the energy of a Silicon Valley startup. Dr. Chen, could you explain again how you achieved quantum coherence at room temperature? A scientist from MIT leaned forward, his eyes bright with excitement. The implications for quantum encryption alone. I stood at the whiteboard, sketching out the theoretical framework we developed. 3 years of work distilled into elegant equations that had rewritten the rules of quantum mechanics. Around the room, some of the world's brightest minds watched intently, occasionally gasping as they grasped the full implications. The key was thinking differently about decoherence, I explained. Instead of fighting quantum collapse, we created a self-stabilizing system that actually uses environmental interference to maintain coherence. It's counterintuitive, but it's brilliant, Dr. Martinez from NASA cut in. You've essentially turned quantum computing's biggest obstacle into its greatest strength. My phone had been buzzing constantly since dinner at the Thompsons, most calls from Michael and his family. I'd ignored them all, focused on documenting our breakthrough. But when the lab door opened and Michael walked in, still wearing his expensive suit from dinner, I knew the personal reckoning I'd been avoiding had arrived. Sarah? He looked lost among the clusters of scientists and equipment. Can we talk? I nodded to Marcus to continue the presentation and led Michael to my small office. He stood awkwardly, taking in the whiteboards covered in equations and the cluttered desk where I'd spent countless late nights. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. All this time, when Mom and everyone were, why didn't you explain what you were really doing? I tried, Michael, many times. But you never wanted to hear about quantum mechanics or coherence theories. You wanted me to get a real job, remember? He winced. I just wanted you to have the kind of success I understood, the kind my family respects. And now? I gestured to the bustling lab beyond my office. Now that NASA and Silicon Valley are fighting over our research. Now that there's talk of a Nobel Prize. Is that the kind of success your family respects? Before he could answer, my office door burst open. Barbara Thompson swept in, dressed for a charity luncheon but looking decidedly frazzled. Sarah, darling. She moved to embrace me, but I stepped back. Why haven't you been answering our calls? The whole country club is buzzing about your discovery. The Worthingtons are simply green with envy. And there it was, the real reason for her sudden interest. Not pride in my achievement or regret for her dismissal of my work, but the social capital she could gain from it. I've been busy, Barbara. Real scientific work, remember? Not just a hobby. She flinched at her own words thrown back at her. Oh, Sarah, you know I didn't mean. We've always supported your career choices. Really? I pulled out my phone and played a recording from last month's family dinner. Barbara's voice, slightly wine-loosened. It's sad, really, watching Sarah waste her potential on these silly experiments. But some people just aren't meant for real achievement. Michael's face darkened. Mom, how could you? It's fine, I cut in. Because you know what's really sad, Barbara? Thinking that real achievement only comes in the form of corporate jobs and social status. While you were planning charity galas and networking events, my team and I were changing the fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics. A commotion from the lab interrupted us. Through the office window, I could see Dr. Martinez talking excitedly on his phone while other scientists gathered around one of our quantum processors. Dr. Chen. Marcus burst in, his face glowing. The Defense Department just approved emergency funding, full black budget status, and Google's offering to build us a dedicated research facility. Anything we want, anywhere we want it. I smiled at my mother-in-law's stunned expression. Excuse me, Barbara. I have some real work to discuss. The next few weeks transformed everything. Our breakthrough made headlines worldwide. Quantum computing revolution, the papers declared. Silicon Valley's next big disruption. My inbox filled with speaking invitations from prestigious universities and technology conferences. The Nobel Committee called on a Tuesday morning. The nomination was official. Through it all, I kept working. The initial breakthrough had opened new doors, new possibilities we were just beginning to understand. Our team expanded, moving to a state-of-the-art facility in Silicon Valley funded by a consortium of tech giants. Michael tried to adjust to his wife's sudden fame. He attended conferences where I was the keynote speaker, sat through technical discussions he barely understood, watched as the scientific community celebrated achievements that had nothing to do with corporate law or social status. I'm sorry, he said one night after a particularly prestigious awards ceremony. I should have believed in you. It's not about believing in me, I replied. It's about respecting that success doesn't always look the way you expect it to. The Thompsons adapted in their own way. Barbara now proudly told anyone who would listen about her brilliant daughter-in-law, the quantum physicist. She even started a science scholarship fund at her country club, though I suspected it was more about social positioning than actual interest in research. Catherine's attitude shifted from condescension to awkward attempts at friendship. You simply must tell everyone about your work at my next charity gala, she'd say, not understanding that I had more important things to do than impress her social circle. 1 year after our breakthrough, I stood on stage at Stockholm's concert hall, accepting the Nobel Prize in Physics. The ceremony was broadcast worldwide, and yes, the Thompsons were in the audience, finally witnessing what real achievement looked like. But as I looked out at the sea of faces, I wasn't thinking about vindication or revenge. I thought about the quiet nights in our warehouse lab, the failures that led to success, the pure joy of discovery that had nothing to do with social status or family expectations. Scientific revolution doesn't happen in boardrooms or country clubs, I said in my acceptance speech. It happens in small labs where people dare to think differently, to question established wisdom, to persist when others see only failure. True innovation comes not from seeking status, but from pursuing truth wherever it leads. In the audience, I saw Michael nodding slowly, finally understanding. Barbara dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, perhaps reflecting on all the times she'd dismissed my little hobby. After the ceremony at the celebration dinner, Dr. Martinez raised a toast to Dr. Sarah Chen, who didn't just change quantum computing, she changed how we think about achievement itself. I thought about the long journey from that dinner at the Thompsons to this moment. The dismissal, the doubt, the quiet determination that had driven me forward. Success hadn't come from seeking approval or status. It had come from staying true to the work itself. Later that night, in our hotel room, Michael found me working on new equations. Some habits don't change, even with a Nobel Prize. You never needed our approval, did you? He asked, watching me sketch out theories for the next breakthrough. No, I smiled. But it's nice that you finally understand why. The quantum computing revolution we started that night in our modest lab continues to transform the world. But the real revolution was quieter, more personal. The recognition that true success isn't measured by social status or family expectations, but by the courage to pursue your own path, regardless of who understands it. Barbara still occasionally suggests I take more socially appropriate roles. Perhaps a board position at a prestigious company or a university chancellorship. I usually respond by sending her our latest research papers, knowing she won't read them but hoping she'll finally understand. I never wanted her kind of success. My team and I continue to push the boundaries of quantum computing, each discovery leading to new questions, new possibilities. The warehouse lab where it all started has been preserved as a museum, a reminder that breakthrough moments don't always happen in gleaming corporate offices. Last week, a young female physicist asked me for advice after a conference. My family doesn't understand why I've chosen research over a corporate career, she said. They think I'm wasting my potential. I showed her the quantum processor that had started everything. Now a small part of much larger systems, but still revolutionary in its simplicity. Success isn't about making others understand your choices, I told her. It's about being willing to pursue truth, even when everyone else calls it a waste of time. Sometimes the greatest achievements come from the work others dismiss as impossible. She smiled, recognition dawning in her eyes. Like stable quantum coherence at room temperature. Exactly. I nodded. Never let anyone else define what your success should look like. The next revolution might come from your little hobby too. As I write this from my new research facility overlooking the Silicon Valley hills, I think about how far we've come from that dinner at the Thompsons. The equations that change everything still cover my office whiteboards, but they're joined by new ones, pushing toward the next breakthrough. Michael has learned to be proud of a different kind of success. The Thompsons have learned that real achievement doesn't always come with a corner office and a country club membership. And I've learned that the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. The Nobel Prize sits on a shelf in my lab, not at home. A reminder that true success isn't about recognition, but about the work itself. Besides, I'm too busy with our next project to spend much time looking at awards. After all, revolution doesn't take breaks for social status. It just keeps quietly changing the world, one impossible discovery at a time.